All right, welcome back to the channel. We've been going over state elicitation, and we've been doing it in very small, bite-sized chunks. Today, we've officially moved on from how to elicit a state and into how to amplify a state, right? There's this thing in Neuro Linguistic Programming about intensity of state. You want to make sure the state is intense. It's strong enough, sufficient enough to do the job that we're looking for. So in these next 4 or 5 videos that we're going to be going over, we're going to be talking about how do you amplify a state? How do you make it stronger? Now, the way we're going to be covering that in this video today is through the use of submodalities. And very simply put, submodalities is a large word that is essentially trying to explain the fact that when you think, you're thinking in pictures and you're thinking in words. For the most part, we can remember smells, we can remember taste, but for the most part, when I'm working with a coaching client, we're thinking about mental imagery, we're working about internal auditory, and we're thinking about feelings. But it is the internal auditory and the internal imagery that produces the feelings that we're working with, whether that's a feeling of happiness, a feeling of sadness, or whether we want to change beliefs, which is a feeling of certainty about something. Those feelings come from your combination of mental imagery and internal auditory. So in this video series, talking about state control, you can amplify your state, you can intensify your state by intensifying your internal visual, your internal auditory, and in fact your internal submodalities, your internal kinesthetics, your internal feelings as well. So what I'd like you to do in this case is pick one of the various state elicitations that we did before. So it could be remember a time when you felt that way, or maybe you want to see yourself in a particular state. But while you do that, I want you to notice what happens when you make that image bigger. So one of the primary visual submodalities, qualities of an image that you can make it bigger, is size. And you know this intuitively, right? When TVs first came out 50 some odd years ago, TVs were this big, right? Actually, the TVs themselves were bigger, but the screens were this big. And then over time, they made the TVs bigger, because as the screen increases, your experience changes. You feel differently. And now you go to an AMC movie theater or a different movie theater, and they have these giant screens that are panoramic, you know, and they have full Dolby digital surround sound, because the intensity of those images has a lot to do with their size. And you'll notice as well that sometimes moving closer to the screen makes the feeling better. Sometimes you can get too close to the screen. Now, your internal experience will be different than looking at a TV, but oftentimes the reason why these changes occur in our outside world is because they are similar to the changes that happen internally for people. So go ahead and do this now. Remember a time when you had that state that you want, and make it a peak experience of having that state. So if it was feeling happy, remember a time that you were really happy. And then what I want you to do is I want you to notice what happens when you double the size of that image. Notice how the feeling intensifies. For most people, making the image bigger, and I would say 90 to 95% of people, making the image bigger will intensify the feeling. So go ahead and begin to relive that now, only double it, and then double it again. Make the image bigger again, and notice how that makes you feel better. Another driver of feelings is distance, right? So if we imagine a picture in our mind, we can imagine it here, we can imagine it there. And this is probably a survival mechanism, that if something is close to you, it has more relevance to your survival. So the brain goes, pay attention to this. And when that happens, you know, it will intensify your experience of something. Oftentimes people who are phobic have an internal representation of something that is gigantic and it's super close to them, and it might be running towards them. So we want to use the same mechanism, but not to scare ourselves. So bring back that memory again now of you being happy. Make that image double the size of it again, until you really start to feel those good feelings. And then notice what happens as you begin to bring it closer to you. Notice how that intensifies the good feeling. And I want you to keep playing with both the size and the distance until you find the change that feels the absolute best. Some people can blow it up so it's the size of the horizon, and that can really intensify the feeling in a good way. For others, that might make it seem silly. So it's really about checking in with your own internal experience and finding out what is that exact size change, that exact distance that allows you to feel the best about that. Now, another thing is brightness, right? So turn up the brightness of that image. Make it brighter and brighter and brighter. And usually, for most people, this will intensify the state as well. So for visual qualities of an image, distance, size, brightness, these are typically ways for most of the population that will intensify the positive state. There is a full list of submodalities that if we were working together one-on-one, I would be going through each of those to find out which one is the real driver for you. But for the most case, distance, size, and brightness, focus and clarity of image, these things are going to be very powerful for you. If you're not getting an experience of intensifying the image, you're going to want to go look at a list of submodalities and go through the entire list and see which changes really intensify that experience. So let's move on to sound now. So you take visual, you've made the image bigger, and you've doubled it again and doubled it again until you're really grinning from ear to ear. If this was a thing of happiness for you, you brought it closer to you till you start to feel those feelings fully. And then check in with the sounds. Turn the sounds of that situation up. What happens when you turn the volume of those sounds up? Make the sounds richer and fuller, and pop it into 365 degrees. What were you saying to yourself at that time? And then turn the internal auditory up. Hear your internal voice louder, more rich, more full. And you might even hear it on a loop so that you can hear it going again and again. And that is another way that you can begin to amplify those good feelings. Right? You can make your internal images bigger and brighter and closer, and then you can turn the volume up of your positive internal dialogue, or the sounds that were there at the time. Turn the sounds up, make them richer and fuller, until you start to feel really good. And lastly, there's the kinesthetics. Where in your body do you feel these good feelings, right? So the way I want you to do this, remember that time when you felt really good, double the size of the image, double it again, make it brighter, bring it closer, hear the sounds, turn the volume up, notice where the feelings are in your body. And feelings have movement to them. Our feelings have to move in order for us to become aware of them, right? The word emotion comes from emotion. So you might have heard before, emotion is energy in motion. Now, whether or not that's your particular frame is not important, but it does turn out to be true for your subjective experience of how you feel feelings. So notice, where do you feel it? In my case, I feel the feeling going up my chest, down my arms, and then back around. So what I want you to do is I want you to trace the path of that feeling. And once you have it, I want you to notice what it's like to intensify the sensation. Turn up the pressure or turn down the pressure. Spin the feeling faster around. And for me, that makes a huge shift. If I spin it faster and then double the speed of it again, it feels a lot better. And so, different kinesthetic submodalities that you can play with are pressure, weight, temperature, vibration, speed of movement, the width of the feeling itself. And to help you do that, you might give this feeling a color. So you could see the feeling in your body, give it a color, and just imagine the color moving faster. And if I do that, then I can see and feel it increasing. So, start it from the top now. Remember that time when you felt really good. Double the size of the image. Double it again, bring it closer to you, and closer, and closer. Turn up the brightness of it so that you really start to feel those good feelings. Now, turn up the sound, make it fuller, richer, hear what you heard at the time, and make the volume louder until you really start to feel those good feelings. Notice where in your body those good feelings are, and spin those feelings faster and faster all throughout your body, intensifying them, feeling them much more intensely, all the way until you're in a peak state. And now, you should be really feeling that state fully. And when you're in that state, you're ready to anchor it. Okay, so that was one way to amplify a state, through the submodalities. In the next couple of videos, we're going to be going over fractionation as another way to go deeper into the state. We'll be going over ways that you can push the state past what you thought was possible. And we'll also be going over polarity drills to create a disparity between, well, one of the ways that we even know we feel good is by comparing it to what we were feeling before. So one of the ways to intensify a state is to compare it to a time when you didn't feel as good. So we'll be going over all of these different ways to help you go further into state. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and do the exercises with me. If you're doing this, you're actually doing cutting edge technology for the mind and body. And if you do the exercises with me, by the end of this video series, you're going to be a lot more competent at your own emotional mastery. See you soon.